Good. Hi, Leanne. I'm just going to, I think we're just going to go into the group now. So I'm just having a look here and then we're good to go. Oh, there we go. Great. Hi, Leanne. Thank you for joining us tonight. I will just wait a few moments while people come in and join us, but it's great to see you.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here. I've finally managed to get the tech working. That's great.
Yeah, I know. It's always a tech bit, isn't it? But yeah, we're in the room now, so that's good. I've got to hi everybody. I'm not actually home. I'm away at the moment, so I haven't got all my usual nice things at home. I'm just making it up as I go along here, so things might go a little bit awry, so sorry about that. Let's have a look here. Oh, there you go. That's good. Well, this is Ace. I've been looking forward to this, Leanne, and I know there's been a bit of a buzz in the group as well. So Leanne and I know each other in real life, which is amazing, right? So which is nice nowadays, and we had a great walk recently together, and when we were talking, I thought, yeah, I've got to get Leanne to come and have a chat in the group, because one of the things that it doesn't get said so much now, but about this kind of way of looking at things is that somehow it's anti-training and that we should not do stuff. And actually it isn't about that, in my opinion. It's about being more mindful about the work that we do and thinking about that concept of having value to the dog, trying to support that. And I talk a lot about shifting from a task-orientated approach to more of a care-orientated approach. And what I love about how you work and what you do in your field, Leanne, is that you have something that is, by its very nature, a task-orientated thing, which is getting the dog to work, but you've created this care-supported approach, which really gives the individual dog a say in things, and there's an element of agency and input, and especially a big emphasis on cooperative working, collaboration within that task. So we're going to unpack some of that today. So Leanne, let's start off by you telling us a little bit about you, and really importantly, how your kind of journey into where you are now, because I know people always find that really interesting.
Okay.
Hang on a minute. We're 1 second, guys. We're being spammed big time in here, so I'm just going to get rid of this person now. I'm going to block him. So sorry, don't click on anything here, guys. All right, we're going to get rid of this guy. Let me have a look how I can do that. Bear with me a minute. Block him. I'm trying to block him. Just ignore all this stuff. Hopefully you can't see him now, because that's really naughty. Let's have a look. Bear with me a minute, guys. They come up everywhere, don't they? They just keep trying to do things. So please ignore this stuff. I don't know who. I can't. Let's delete that comment. Yeah, just bear with me, everybody. In fact, Leanne.
Yes.
Do that while I do this.
Oh, you want me to talk while you do that?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, that's all right. So I came a bit of a circuitous route to dog training. I trained as an engineer, and so my gift to myself when I graduated was a German Shepherd. And I read all the books, but she didn't read the books, so we had a little bit of a shock when I got her. So I concentrated on getting a dog with really good hips, and she had really good hips, but not very much else. So she was really quite nervous and really great little working dog. She just would do anything for me, but she was just desperately frightened of the world, had not very good socialization. I didn't know any better when I bought her. So we went on a really interesting journey. So when I started researching to try and help her through the problems that she had, I started reading a lot of the stuff that was available, and it was all about the dominance theory. And I would read the books and I would look at my dog and think, this dog doesn't care who rules the world. She's just desperately frightened and wants the thing to go away. So having sort of come from a problem-solving science background, my immediate thought was, well, if the theory doesn't hold for this particular individual, then there's got to be something wrong with the theory. So I started looking for other ways to approach how, helping her and dealing with it. And cut a long story short, I ended up doing the COPE diploma, taught myself, basically got into it to help my dog, then realized that I actually preferred working with dogs than engineering. came across Sally Jones, who was quite sort of progressive at the time. She sort of had been to Bob Bailey's chicken camps and was really introducing clicker training to Britain, one of the sort of pioneers in that area. Really got good friends with Sally, finished all of my training, ended up moving down and joining Dogs for Dogs, and worked alongside her. She was a full member of the Association of Pet Behaviour Counsellors, so she gave me a real sort of good sounding board and somebody to bounce things off, and whenever I was struggling I could ask her and stuff. So she's been a real sort of a mentor in these first sort of early years of my training. So going back to my German Shepherd, she wanted to work, so we did all sorts of stuff. We did obedience, we did agility. A friend of mine had Gundogs, so we did Gundog training, even though she was German Shepherd. We did tracking, we did all sorts of different stuff, which, you know, she gave me such a wide introduction to everything that you could possibly do with dogs. And I realized that actually Gundog training was where my heart was. And so I then embarked on my next dog. Unfortunately, she died quite young. She had an autoimmune problem, and eventually we got to the point where it was kinder to let her go because she was starting to suffer. And then I got Indy, who was a German Wirehead pointer, who, again, not knowing what I was doing, I stumbled upon. I thought I was getting a Labrador, but with more energy. And I had not a clue about the hunt drive that comes with that breed. And later, after about 18 months, I found Helen Phillips, who's again a positive Gundog trainer. She done a huge amount with clicker training and that sort of stuff. And so I eventually found Helen, and Helen was saying, yes, she is a very extreme version of a very extreme breed. And so I didn't feel so bad about not being able to deal with it as my first introduction to hunting breeds. So again, she taught me loads, absolutely, you know, made me cry, made me so tired because I would drive 2.5 hours to see Helen train for 4 hours and drive home again. But because she was so difficult, I made that effort, and if it hadn't have been for that, I wouldn't have forged that bond with Helen Phillips. And she's been sort of a mentor as well, who's taken me through my sort of Gundog side of my education and helped me, and, you know, gave me a good solid sort of springboard for what I've learned, you know, going on from there. So the other person who I've learned huge amounts from is Susan Garrett, because again, I'd started in agility, and her training is so layered, providing it gives the dog a really good solid foundation, and looking at creating understanding through choice, which really resonated with me. I didn't want to force a dog to do stuff. I wanted to educate them and encourage them and motivate them to make the choices that I would like them to make. And then branched out into working cockers, and I've sort of stayed with them since. My first one was a little chocolate one. He was a dream. Introduced me to working a dog, and the joy that working with a dog who's working in instinctive drive and them actually inviting you into their world and working as a team, there's just no feeling like it. And, you know, I got a good taste of that with Indy doing agility. There are days when everything worked and it felt like you were sort of almost telepathic with the communication between, you know, where you wanted the dog to go, and that kind of feeling came across as well with the Gundog training. Once you end up with a well-trained dog, that you can then sort of, you know how they work, they know how you work, they trust you, you trust them, you ask them to do a job, you've trained them to do that job, they do the job, and then they come back and say, what would you like me to do now? And that has kind of gone on through with Eric, and now I've got Ragnar, and each dog's taught me something very different. And Eric he's been again a game changer as far as moving me from that sort of more task orientated approach to training to very much understanding how the emotional side affects their learning and their ability to manage themselves and all of that sort of stuff. And he's really opened that up to me, because he was very, very vocal. And so anytime he was frustrated or couldn't handle himself, he would scream at me. So it was really easy to tell when he was struggling. So Branston, my first cocker, I think he was possibly in the same emotional state, but because he was genetically mute, he just trembled instead of screaming at me. So it wasn't, his emotional state wasn't a problem to me because he was quiet, but I think it was probably a problem to him because I hadn't created the education for him where he could manage himself in a way which didn't involve shaking and being slightly over aroused and that sort of stuff. So then I've taken those lessons forward to Ragnar, and I'm still making mistakes as I go, but we're sort of refining as we go and trying to find this approach where it's getting the dog to, when they are in instinctive drive, to want to work with you and also want to manage their biochemistry to the point where they are at that optimum state of arousal where they can do their job but listen and stop working and then start working and stop working. And for a lot of working dogs, the stopping work is really punishing, and a lot of what I'm kind of trying to get a handle on at the moment is how to make stopping work not a punishment. So it's like everything, it's a work in progress, but that's kind of a bit of a quick overview of where I've been and where I've come to.
I think it's really interesting. There's so many things I just want to unpack on that. I'm sorry you have to keep looking away, but we keep getting people spamming in our thing. So if you see anybody saying click here to hear this stuff, just ignore that, guys. I'm trying to deal with it while we're talking about. I think what's really interesting about this, and of course, dogs are our greatest teachers, right? If we're available to the lessons they want to give us.
Yeah.
And I think because you'd gone through that initial kind of story with your first dog, where you recognized that you had to look at things more than just getting the dog to do something, and then you managed to get that education with Cope. By the way, we've got Robert Faulkner Taylor, who was one of the engineers of Cope originally, who's coming in. Dr. Robert Faulkner Taylor, I should say. Robert's coming in a couple of weeks, actually, on the 27th, Sunday 27th. So this Sunday, actually, great. 5 o'clock. Yep. Loads to talk about with Robert. That really got that part of your mind thinking about those things. And then you end up with a dog like Eric, who, like you say, your other dog might have internalized a little bit and might have had those struggles. And I do wonder, with a lot of the dogs that I've worked with who have come from a work background, they can internalize a bit. They can have a stoicism about them, which means that some of that outlet, some of that ability to be able to show emotional need is kind of regressed, really. But when you had a dog like Eric, who was really demonstrative.
That's a really kind way of putting it.
Yeah, I don't know, and I had the chance to meet him, which is great. Sadly, we lost Eric recently. But they are our best teachers, and I think that has really cemented listening to you talking about recognizing about getting that balance right. Because I think if we just focus purely on the task, we can just see some of the challenges that are posed by that, some of the emotional need or that kind of behavior as expression of need, as a reason to try and think about training more, why isn't this working? But you were really in a position to be mindful of Eric's actual care and support needs and finding that balance. Something else that's really important is the dog that you had, the pointer, that you were really overwhelmed with, and like you say, he turned out to be kind of on the challenging end of a challenging end of the challenging end, that dog.
Yes, yeah.
And that it reduced you to tears, which is sad, I know. But for anybody listening in, it just goes to show how important it is to recognize the heritage of some of these dogs, especially if you're a caregiver who's in a domestic situation, they're not working. And we talk all the time about trying to support behaviors that have innate value. And for these dogs, there is a heavy genetic disposition to have a very specific drive that they look to kind of invest in, and that hunt drive is a big one.
Yes.
And as behavioral professionals or as trainers, to turn up and then expect that person for you to kind of in one session train that out of the dog, it's an impossible ask. And this is the thing about trying to meet these dogs halfway, isn't it? About trying to recognize, and I love what you said earlier about trying to find that balance, right, that equilibrium between giving them that outlet but by also being able for them then to be able to kind of switch off, or to be able to kind of live as a dog.
Yes.
Sometimes they're living as the working dog, but they have to live as a dog as well, otherwise it's just going to be exhausting, I should think, and like you say, quite punishing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the breed lines, especially from the working lines, have come so heavily from a situation where they're kennelled, then they come out, they exercise or they train, and then they go back in the kennelled environment. So basically they go, when they're in their downtime, they have no stimulation at all. And then they come out, they work, and then they go back in that to no stimulation. And now we're putting those dogs who have been selected for that environment into a pet home, where when they're not working, they're still massively stimulated. And I've seen quite a lot of spaniels recently who can't switch off unless there's absolutely no stimulation. And it makes sense, you know, coming from the lines that have been heavily kennelled, they don't need to have that ability to switch off in a stimulating environment, apart from in a work environment when traditionally it was intimidated out of them, so they couldn't express their emotional needs because they were too frightened to. And so that was how it was dealt with. But now obviously we're trying to do it in a more compassionate way, that we educate the dogs how to manage themselves in order that they don't find doing nothing punishing, in order that we can seamlessly transition from work to standby mode, waiting to work, and actually off when nothing's going to be happening. And I think more and more that's really what I'm seeing, that the easy bit for not just gun dog training, but any training where you're working with instinctive drive. I'm working with a colleague, Gwen Johnson, who she works in herding with the herding breeds, and she does sort of livestock herding and that sort of stuff. So again, we found so many similarities where you're working in instinctive drive in an uncontrolled circumstance, where the dog's job is inherently reinforcing, and we're asking them to stop doing the job on cue, without then putting punishment in to intimidate them out of doing that behavior. So we've got to have something that's more valuable to them than stopping work, it's more valuable to them to carry on work, in order that stopping work isn't punishing. And so it's trying to find the sort of way to create that education before the dog becomes fixed down that instinctive route. So with Indy, I found that information out way too late. So it was about 18 months before she was at 18 months old before I found that. So this is my German wire hair. And so I never got to the point where I had something that was more valuable to her than hunting game. So we got to the point where in a non-game environment, she would really enjoy playing with me with toys. But as soon as she heard a pheasant call or scented rabbit or anything like that, she'd be like, off, see ya. And so that's why now I work really, really hard with my puppies to create that real strong value in interacting with me in some way with toys, so that by the time that their hunt drive kicks in, I've taught them to hunt for toys, not just game. So I can give them an outlet for that instinct as a team, hunting as a team, rather than they learn it on their own and it's a self-employed activity. And so that's sort of how I've trying to work through it. It's not 100% coalesced into it works every time, but we're getting there. is basically and it's the earlier we start it, I think it's more challenging to retrain something, to teach a hunting breed not to hunt all the time gets harder and harder the older they get, because obviously they're much more traveled down that path.
Again, loads of really cool things there, Leanne, because I get what you say as well, especially with spaniels. So, but also with the collies to a point as well. I think you end up with you've got a breed, like you say, who can be in that. It doesn't take much to get that arousal level up for that kind of those fixed action patterns, those modulated action patterns to kick in to get into that state. So that element of elevation, element of arousal kicks in all that neurology that has been there for, that's the stuff that's really passed over. And if you imagine that kind of working cocker in a home environment where the environment is just so stimulating all the time, and that circuitry is stimulated all the time, they can never fully rest out. And it's really difficult for them not to be, like you say, they end up going self-employed. Otherwise, they've got to find that thing. And this is why, especially for the collies I work with, but even with spaniels, part of the job for us is to find ways to slow stuff down, to give them the opportunities to find that space where they can do little and process less. So that's really interesting you say that. I think it's a very important thing that we've all got to recognize. And a lot of caregivers go the other way. They get caught in what I call the activity cycle.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because they think, oh, my dog's pumped up, so I've got to give him something to do, which just pumps up the dog.
Yeah.
And I've got to give him more to do, and it just goes round and round and round.
Yeah.
And the answer almost always is doing less, actually, giving that decompression, and then having the activity bit being really focused, focused.
Yeah. And I think a lot of, I seem to be getting more and more spaniels now, because people go, oh, Leanne's good at spaniels. They keep sending me these spaniels who are off their heads, and people have been trying to do the right thing because they get told, oh, you need to exercise this dog for 2 hours a day, but they're doing it, they're exercising, they're letting their bodies exercise, and this addiction build of running and scenting, which is an endless process, whereas hunting is actually has a start point and a stop point. So you kick the dog off, don't kick the dog, but you start the dog off hunting. They hunt for something, they find scent, they find the source of the scent, and then it either flies away or they retrieve it. And that's the end of the hunting. And that process then produces brain chemistry, which reinforces it. And so, whereas the running and scenting is endless. And I think they just get an adrenaline high, just running and scenting and running and scenting. And there is no end point to that, because they don't find the source of the scent and then stop. You may then restart the behavior again immediately, but it's another discrete hunting phase. We find something and we either can stop that then or restart the behavior again. So yeah, that's, I think, the fallacy of being told that you have to exercise a spaniel huge amounts, or any of the other hunting breeds, they need lots and lots of exercise. They don't. If you give them the right education, I mean, that's my working dog just back there. He has had not a huge amount of exercise today or for the last week, but because he has the skill set and the life skill of resting when he's inside and just accepting the fact that nothing's happening, he can switch off and do nothing, even though he hasn't had vast quantities of exercise. Some days he gets a lot of exercise. If we're out shooting, he'll be out 5 hours, and working really hard for 5 hours. But other days, if I'm really busy with work, he has minimal, exercise, and he still can switch off and rest, not because he's exhausted, but just because nothing's happening.
And I think this is why, especially if you're trying to work out what it is this dog needs, especially when you think of a dog who's in a domestic setting, having some challenges, trying to find those individual bits that dog can really benefit from having access to do that. Because as you say, especially when they're younger and they're in a domestic setting, some of that kind of neurology starts to come online. They're seeking some stuff, but even the dog doesn't know what they're supposed to do or how it's supposed to work, and there's no framework to it. There's no structure that we have to give. And I'm really surprised to hear that some of this stuff can happen really early on, because you said it can happen even before 16 weeks.
Yeah,
some of these things can happen.
I think I lost Indy. She went hunting deer before she was 16 weeks old, and that was properly, she was gone for about 10 minutes, and at 16 weeks I realized, what have I got? It was just, and bless her, she found her way back, right back to where she'd left me. So she was completely under, she knew what was going on. I was panicking and running all over the place trying to find her, but I should have just stayed still. But yeah, it kicks in really early, and some of the spaniels I've had kick in, that hunt drive kicks in 13, 14, 15 weeks, and if people haven't got that early sort of refocusing back in, and teaching them to hunt as a team sport really early, then it can catch people by surprise, and it just goes south very, very quickly, and the control goes, because there is switch off when the nose switch is on. So,
and that's a really good point there. I just want to come to that in 1 second. I just want to say, so this is when you see somebody who has a kind of a working line dog, especially with, it's got a quite heavy working line there, but it's in a domestic setting. I hate these signs you see, by the way, Leanne, especially within the rural community, that says, I don't know, spaniels for sale, collies for sale, whatever for sale, suit home or work, because they want to get rid of them. They can't suit both, really. No. But anyway, that's by the way. But you can imagine a situation then where you've got this pup and they're really bright and they're really cool, and they might not show anything early on, but that dog's brain is saying, I've got to do something, I've got to connect something, I've got to do something. And then one day, out of the blue, for the caregiver, they've chased something or they've done something. And that's when the dog thinks, that's what I need to do.
Yes, that's my life's work.
That's my life work. But there's been no input from the human up to that point.
No, so how no guidance.
So it's, exactly, and it's hard to do it. Somebody says in the comments here, actually, where is it here? Yeah, Sue says, hunting should be a team pursuit, not a solo one.
Yeah.
And this is where we have to think about the real value of having training, of having that connective element, to support something that pup is already going to be heavily genetically predisposed to. Yes. And finding those suitable outlets. Yeah. And educating people early on about these things. And again, so the other thing you said there about the nose, we tend to, with normal structured training for a dog, the normal obedience stuff, it's all about see this, hear that, see this, hear that. We're not paying any attention to the nose, really. And if you've got a dog who's like, well, I'll do all that for you, but actually for me, I'm going to use my nose here. Yeah. Again, the humans out of that cycle, aren't they? Because they haven't even connected to the nose at that point.
No. And I just came across a spaniel the other day, and they brought him over, and he spent the first half an hour with his nose on the floor. Where I train, it's reasonably interesting, but not massively interesting. That most well-adjusted spaniels even will have a quick, run around, have a quick look, and then go, right, reconnect with the human. He spent half an hour without taking his nose off the floor. He'd actually greeted me. I'd crouched down and greeted him, and he'd sniffed me, and then he'd gone away again. And then he suddenly looked up and saw me and completely freaked out, because he had been unaware that I was there for the entire time, until suddenly something happened and he completely freaked out about it. So they can get so focused into the scent world that they don't even register what comes through their eyes very well, other than, not running into stuff. And they're not listening either. And I had somebody else bring a spaniel to me. They were convinced was deaf. The vet had told them it was deaf. So I had her for 3 weeks, and I'm that good. The dog went back hearing.
Wow, those healy hands of yours.
Absolutely. It's just nothing that they had done was relevant to her, and she hadn't.
I love that.
And it was very clear, because she was from quite a noisy household, and there was other dogs there, and lots of the kids were there, and I don't think she'd even realized that what people were saying to her was relevant to what she was doing. And because I at that point I was living on my own, I had only had one other dog, she very quickly, in a quiet environment, suddenly went, oh, these noises have relevance to me. So I think it's something that we again, bringing that building your relevance into the dog's world, and coming at it and looking at it as to how do I make what I want from the dog relevant to the dog's life, so they access what they want by cooperating with what I want. And that's really the sort of thing that I try to bring through into the Gundog training, is how do I make it worth the dog's while to do what I want them to do in a situation where it's counter to what their instinct is telling them to do. And so it's sort of working with that sort of information, and learning each dog as an individual, because they all have different reinforcement patterns. And so trying to find so I do huge amounts of play with my puppies. I try and teach a lot of what I teach them with play to start with, because it doesn't matter if you can't make a mistake when you're playing, you know. there isn't really a downside. It just tells me lots of stuff that I need. Okay, this dog has more of a possession drive, this dog has more of a chase drive, this dog is quite sensitive, this dog likes a lot of robust play. And so I try and do a huge amount of that, so I understand their reinforcement sort of hierarchy and what I can offer them that makes them want to interact with me. And then from there move out into then, okay, if you want me to do this for you, will you do this for me? And sort of work that way. So that's sort of where I've kind of, I try and find a lot of that relevance to them through play.
I think I think that's a couple of things there. And so when you said that about with the dog that everybody thought was deaf, and then it's because nobody did anything relevant for that dog. Yeah, that's just an amazing little moment there, because relevancy is really important. I talk about emotional relevancy when thinking about supporting dogs with care and support needs, because how relevant are we to those support care needs? I remember when we met for a dog walk, you said that with dogs with the high drives to work, they find a lot of stuff really powerfully self-reinforcing. Yeah. And if we can tap into that, then that really helps that process to find that middle ground for what they need to do, what we need to do them. And this is another issue, I think, with people who don't understand some of this stuff necessarily. I wouldn't say I understand things in the way you do, but in fact, some of the stuff I know I've got from you and your books.
Thank you.
But we'll talk about your books in a minute. But when you think about a dog then in a domestic home who has got these drives, they haven't been picked up on, they've gone self-employed, and then the trainer comes in with a normal kind of operant approach to try and train the dog. It's that lack of recognition that actually what you're trying to maybe reinforce through toys or play or food at that point is nowhere near matching the self-reinforcement that dog has now developed.
Yes,
and,
absolutely.
And this comes back to this thing about learning about doing really good observations about that dog in front of you now, trying to find out what is those component parts for you and finding ways to unknit that. Yes. And knit it back together in a way where the dog can still get those connections and those outputs, but be able to live a normalish life. And that's very hard for some of these dogs, actually, Leanne. Yeah. I've got to say, some
absolutely,
of them, they struggle with it.
And I think some of the people that I come to me wanting fixes for recalls with hunting breeds, I kind of try and manage their expectations of what we can achieve. Because if you've got a dog who has been for years self-employed, unless, it depends on the dog, but unless we can find something else in that dog's reward hierarchy, if they happen to have also been playing a lot of, for argument's sake, ball games with them, and that dog actually does have an inherent reinforcement or by chasing balls, then yes, we've got a good chance of being able to get a 100% recall, because we've got something that's worth the dog giving up the hunting for. But 95% of these dogs are like Indy, where you can get in certain environments, you can get to the point where, yes, I have control of my dog in this environment, but outside of those environments, I don't have any training control, so I have to have physical control. And I think this is something that I work very heavily with, is management is a massive part of the way that I train, because with the puppies, through training and through setting up environmental learning, I can never let them learn that actually self-employed hunting is more important than working with me, because I just never let them learn it until I know I've got that ultimate reinforcer in that environment that they will choose over the environment. I don't put them in a situation where they could learn that. Now, a lot of dogs come to me that they have already learned that self-employed hunting is far, far in excessively better than anything that this particular human has to offer. So in the short term, and for some dogs forever in certain circumstances, we have to limit their access to the environment in order to be able to, for them to be safe living in the world that we live. Because you can't let your dog free run through livestock. You can't let your dog run on a road. There's all sorts of dangers that are there if you don't manage your dog either with training or with a long line. So with Indy, she had certain areas where it was safe for her to free run, because I knew I had something that she would return. I could recall, and she had a very high level recall in certain areas. Other areas, I couldn't take her to the woods, free runner, because she'd be off chasing deer. She nearly killed herself one day in Holden. It was a really, really hot summer's day. She took off after a deer, and she was away for about a quarter of an hour, 20 minutes. And when she came back, she was almost on the brink of heat exhaustion. And so, she had no self-preservation at all. And so she got onto railway tracks. She jumped off massively high. She jumped off a wall 20 foot up and lamed herself, and in the end, for her own safety, I had to limit her freedom in certain areas, because I had no training control. She had to be on a long line or a flexi lead, which I know people are going to be horrified that I use flexi lead for my dog, but when you have a dog who can't control themselves but you want to give them a limited amount of freedom, sometimes flexi leads are the option, and for her, it was the sort of way that I could manage her and give her some of what she wanted without losing the ability to control her and keep her safe. So
I think this is really important, Leanne. Again, so much you said there. I'm hoping everybody's really getting a lot from this, because I am. And I think there's a few things here. It's being honest. You've just been really honest there about that situation, and it's best. We've got to be honest with our clients. We've got to be prepared to let them know. And it obviously, as a professional, if you're not aware of some of this stuff, you can't, because you think there's this notion of somehow if you train more, a lot of the bravado that comes around the, oh yeah, I guarantee 100% recall and all this kind of stuff, that just gets in the way of the reality and the safety. And what I'm hearing all through our talk so far is that we need better education for the general public about what they're taking on when they bring in some of these breeds into their home. And for some of the dogs that you've mentioned that who've already experienced that kind of self-employed hunting and that kind of the real kick that it gives, we've got to be able to educate those caregivers that you can't have a dog who's going to be able to cope with the urban, suburban environment and to be able to go into the rural area and be able to control themselves. You have to decide on bringing that dog's world in and having those things there, rather than putting the pressure on yourself as a professional that somehow you've got to get this dog to be okay off lead in every situation.
And so, it's just not possible sometimes. It's like I say, with Indy, I tried for 6 years, and the day she got onto the railway and nearly killed herself, I thought, this is not working. I'd flogged myself to pretty much to death to try and safety proof this dog, and it just I'd reached the plateau where I didn't have what I had was not worth her giving up what she wanted to give up. And so in the end, I decided that I was going to stop trying to fix her, and I was just trying to so I give her as many other outlets for her because she just needed to run. So I did canicross with her, I did bike joring with her, we did agility, which the joy she got from agility made me feel that she had joy in her life again, and that there was something that she excelled at. She actually was I didn't realize that dogs could be competitive and understood competition, but she did, because you could take her to training and no matter how much you tried to rev her up in training, she would do it about 80%. Soon as she stepped over the ring rope into the agility competition, she went up a couple of gears. And so it was very hard to train because I knew as soon as I went into the ring, I would have to run faster, make the decision slightly sooner. And so it was more of a challenge. She knew what she was doing. It was just me getting my timing right. That was the issue. And so, but you could see the difference in that dog, and as she understood competitiveness. She tried so hard when she was in the actual arena, and I don't know to this day how she managed to know the difference, but I mean, there's a huge amount of stuff, but that dog was competitive and really enjoyed competing. And then I know other dogs that don't really like competing. They'll do the job, but you can't see that joy in the competing. And so it was just really interesting that she was such an amazing educator for me. Some days I could tear my hair out with her, and other days I was just in awe of, the potential that there was in that dog. That, if I had her again now, I think things would turn out a lot different. But, she is helped me help a huge amount of other people, with similar problems. And also I can generally say, I completely understand where you're coming from. I understand about not liking your dog and wishing that you didn't have this particular dog because it's so difficult just to be with them. And so, yeah, she was, yes, I wouldn't want to do the experience again, but I wouldn't be without it.
Exactly, and I think this is the thing. Arthur's our kind of he's our sensitive dog, if you like, and I get that as well. Some days you get very frustrated, other days you're really humbled, and I think some dogs, they come along and they say, yeah, all that stuff you've learned, you can just throw that away, because this is why I talk about the emotional experience and how individual it is, because for that individual dog, there's loads of component parts there, and I think to dismiss anything completely regarding activities or different sports or whatever might be missing a component part for that dog, actually, which is there.
Yeah.
The bigger picture thing, of course, is that when you've got a dog, you've gone along to see that dog in a domestic setting, having a lot of challenges, there are compromises that have to be met. The problem is that dog is in the wrong environment.
Yes.
The problem is that dog didn't have the right connective outlets early on. Those are the problems, and they're hard to completely undo. So we have to compromise, and there will be elements of where that dog isn't going to have the fulfilled life it might have had in a different setting. But those are the compromises that I think we have to think about. And when you're looking at working with these dogs, I think it is such a clearly defined skill set, because not only do you have a big practical skill set that you doing your passion, which is working with Gundog specifically, but also really understanding hunting dogs, their heritage, their makeup. And I do wonder actually whether a more general trainer can actually fully support a dog like that, actually. That might sound a little bit controversial, I don't know. But I just think, listening to all these little things that we talked about today, I just think, wow, there's so many areas there. If you just go in purely operantly thinking, right, we're going to train this, we're going to train that, we're going to train the other, without knowing enough, like you have, on a kind of very fundamental basis about the dog and what to look for that individual dog.
Yeah,
there's going to be a lot of mistakes made otherwise. There's going to be a lot of pushing upstream. What we got to remember is the traditional approach here, actually, which is still the norm, I'm guessing, is actually not to forget about all this stuff. We're just going to punish the hell out of that.
Yeah,
and the dog will comply.
Yeah, stop the behavior working. Yeah,
exactly. And what you've actually looked at doing, and these are the people you've mentioned and others, is really thinking, hang on, there's got to be a different way here. We've got to recognize what we humans We're the ones who have created a genetic makeup here. What can we do with that dog who already has some of those kind of outlooks that are kind of pre-programmed, plus what that individual dog, that individual unique dog who is unique, has as part of that? That takes a lot of unpicking, and actually it's hugely specialized, Leanne.
And I think as well, there's breeders who also train and compete, and I think it's breeding dogs that like I said, the ones that are bred to live in kennels and work and go back to kennels again have a certain sort of temperament type, but it's looking then at how do we breed dogs that still do the job but can cope with living in a pet environment, because there is on the the continuum of spaniels, for argument's sake, there are spaniels who fit really well into a pet environment, and there's spaniels that fit into a pet environment that also work really nicely. And it's looking, even towards the breeding those lines, and Jane Arden and Vicky Pine, and those are just people. I don't really know very many people, so I'm sure there's huge amounts of people who are doing a lot of what I'm already doing, but just haven't had a chance to meet you, Andrew, so don't get to come on here and talk about it. That there's a lot of people out there trying to work towards that sort of ultimate, where we can marry this type of cooperative training with a temperament that is open to working with that type of training. So you can produce a temperament that has toy, play, food and people as very easily accessible in the reinforcement hierarchy, alongside the hunt drive and the retrieve drive and that sort of stuff. And I think that's ultimately where we've got to end up, is where we're breeding dogs for the training that we are trying to put in, because in America they use a lot of e-collars, and so quite a lot of the American lines, especially the retrievers, are very hard. They're not as sensitive as the English lines of Labradors. Vast generalities, I apologize if I'm offending anybody, but sort of as a general rule, if you want a sensitive Labrador, they come to the British lines or the European lines, and the American lines are a little bit, because they train them to go a lot further in a straight line, and there's a lot of e-collar work over there is very much part of the norm. And so dogs that can't deal with that amount of punishment don't get very far, and so you end up with quite hard lines over there. So it is, you can breed temperament to accept the training that you put in. And I think a lot of the reason that the working cockers became very much more popular as the positive training came in, is because they are had been bred much more sensitive than the spring, again, very generalized, the Springer lines. And so I think that's why the cockers suddenly became more popular, as the training became less harsh, because a lot of the Springers were able to deal with the punishment. It meant that it was more challenging to train them positively. So again, I apologize, I'm not trying to offend anybody. It's just sort of talking in generalities, and what I've observed over the last 10 or 15 years, look with the spaniels that have come through, and seeing that sort of popularity of the cocker come through from the Springer. And that's my personal theory. I may be completely wrong. But that's,
we have, my husband and I had a good friend, Russell, who's a Gundog trainer down here. He sadly passed away a couple of years ago. Russell was amazing because he was a typical kind of country Gundog trainer, very Devonshire, with the accent and that kind of thing, a bit of a cheeky chap.
Yeah.
But he cared passionately about the dog's emotional experience,
right,
which set him against most of his peers, right? Because and he said something very similar, Leanne, about that, and how there has to be a fundamental shift down up.
Yeah.
Because and this is what I love about what you're trying to advocate for, and where you've got your positive Gundog conference that you've been putting on for a few years now. We will make sure we put these things in through the comments, and I'll put up a separate Leanne post, I think, about your books and,
Thank you.
and that kind of thing. But what I love about this is a great thing for us to kind of be finishing off with, really, because the hour's gone, Leanne. It's amazing. That for us to have a truly compassionate, dog-centered approach here, we have to start thinking about what we are putting into these dogs from a breeding point of view. What are we selecting for now?
Yeah.
And in the past, it's been selected for task in quite a harsh way, actually. Some of these dogs don't have much of an outlet there, but now we're looking for that cooperative care, trying to find that way of thinking. And actually what you're talking about is almost going back in time, right? Back in time, when we were really breeding working dogs to have a cooperative angle. I'll do this for you, you do that for me, this is how we're going to work through. At some point, we've got sucked down the task route so much that we've just created a kind of a push for these dogs genetically just to be able to do task.
And I think it's created some really extreme brain chemistry, which is really detrimental to a lot of the dogs that I see. Especially from the trialing lines, you get this, they want them to be flashy for about 20 minutes and then that's them done. You can put them in a bag and carry them home. Whereas for the sort of more working lines, you need them to be working at about 80%, but all day. And you look at a pedigree that's heavily field trial, and I could probably pick, if you put a lineup of dogs and let me see them, I probably could tell you which ones were heavily field trial and which were more working lines just by looking at them, because the sort of fizz that comes off, the, again, general big generality, from the trialing lines is much more pronounced than from the working lines in general. And I am seeing a lot more dogs that are serotonin deficient because of this sort of fizz factor that they want, and to the point where I've been seeing a lot of spaniels recently that can't actually switch off unless there is no stimulation at all, which means switching off in a home environment is almost impossible for them, and it becomes, they're constantly moving to drive their endorphins to make themselves feel good, and so they are, you know, if you stop them from moving, which is, you know, what you need to do, then their sort of biochemistry crashes as well. So it's really, you know, something which you know, I'm not a breeder, so I you know, I don't know, you know, what people can do about that, but obviously selecting for the more stable temperament, the sort of temperaments that produce this right amount of serotonin in the brain and all of the other stuff that all of your very smart brainy people can tell you about. But you know, I'm seeing so much more of this. It's a brain chemistry issue, it's not a training issue, and that's basically what happened with Eric. Is I'd done all of this off switch work and teaching him to settle and educating him to settle, and it got to the point where I saw he understands what I want of him, but he can't actually do it. And it's that, at that point, we then went down the route of sort of artificially increasing his serotonin. And at that point you went, and you could actually see the difference that the serotonin was making to him, and he could actually settle, and he was much more content. And, you know, for the rest of his life, he, you know, it was much happier for him. And so, yeah, I think it is, you know, breeding has got a huge amount to do with the quality of our dogs' lives, and, you know, looking to go to breeders who are looking at that breeding for pets who work, because it's a very different market from, you know, trialing, which, you know, I dread it when people come and say, oh, it's got a really nice pedigree, it's got lots of field trial champions in it. It's like, no, are you going to be trialing your dog? Well, why did you want a field trial then? So yeah, it's again educating people about what to look for when they're buying a dog and a puppy. So,
and this is where all this, when we went on our dog walk together, this fits into this new landscape for me. and this is why we aren't detaching from task. You know, moving away to care doesn't mean you don't do task. It just means you start caring about some of this stuff you're talking about, and the emotional experience of the dog. And this is why this fits in this new landscape, this new movement for me, this what you're talking about, because, you know, oh my God, you know, Leanne, you're doing such amazing stuff within your community, which is quite a fixed community. You know, even being a woman in that community doing the training you do is in itself, you know, it's predominantly men, right? It's predominantly men within.
Well, it's interesting because since I think positive training has come in, there's been a huge swing through to women doing Gundog training, and I think a lot of women wanted to train gun dogs, but didn't want to train it in a harsh way, and now there is a huge community of female gun dog trainers who are either trainers or just handler train, you know, people who train their own dogs or people who train other people to do that. So I'm by no means you know, a lone pioneer. There is a growing number of people, many of whom I have learned from, and, you know, taken bits of information from them. And I know there's people I don't know about who are, you know, carrying on doing a great job, and there's some people, you know, starting now to be noticed in the trialing world, as well as, you know, just working there, not just working, but working. But there's also competitors now, because I think unless we can compete on a level playing field and show that our dogs come out as well trained as a traditionally trained dog, then until we get to that point and consistently our people are winning at the top levels, then positive gun dog training is not going to be taken seriously. Because, and to be fair, I understand if you can get, you know, churn out 100 field trial champions and get paid lots and lots of money for it, doing it in a traditional way, why would you want to take the time to change all of your training over to positive training, which, when it's not as, in their mind, as effective as the traditional way that they've been training? And so I think encouraging people who are competing in these sort of more disciplines that are traditionally very quite harsh in their training. So I think the herding people as well, and some of the working trials, again, the positive people who are training in a positive and a compassionate way need to be encouraged in their competitive endeavors, in order that they can show another way that you can achieve this top level of dog training with a compassionate form of training. And I think agility is a really lovely sort of roadmap, because initially it started out, it was quite sort of formal and traditional, and, you know, in its training. And what has very quickly come through is that positive training is actually more effective in an agility environment than traditional training. Now, agility was a very baby sport, so there wasn't the history of the traditional training working. And I think in these other sort of more sort of work competitions like herding and Gundog work, where there is a long history of successfully training millions of dogs using the traditional methods, and then comparing to the relatively few dogs who've been trained using positive methods, and the positive methods are still developing and being perfected. We've got a lot of catch up, I think. And so, you know, I think some people who want to train compassionately think that competing is not a good way to go. And I think it is, if we want to make an impact in the real world, we have to be able to work at the level that you can get traditionally and excel. And I think, you know, the people who are obviously working their dogs and not working their dogs absolutely should be encouraged as well. But I think it's something that maybe within our community would be to encourage those people, because to get out there and stand up in front of a lot of people who desperately want you to fail because you train differently takes a heck of a lot of courage, and I take my hat off to them.
Well, and to you, of course, for for being part of that. And I think what listening to a few things that you say there, we're a few minutes over, guys. I just want
Sorry.
to no, it's not that. I'm just letting everybody know. Yeah. We think about dog training, the dog training world, as being this one mass, but it's not. We've got different areas and different pockets, and within your specific part of the community, there is still a long way to go. And like you say, a lot of things are stacked against you a little bit, I think, because of the numbers of dogs that are bred in a certain way to do a certain task, and people who have a very task-oriented approach. This is the point. I think many people, they see a lot of this stuff as being irrelevant, because if the dog can do the task, that is the point.
Yes.
And I think in the kind of general community, if you like, of kind of pet dog training and behavior, we made that shift, the arguments towards more of a compassionate view. Now we're making a shift towards more of an emotional based view, because I think some people think the move to positive reinforcement was the end of the story, but for me it's just the beginning. It's just the beginning of more. But what you're trying to do, Leanne, is actually embrace all that bit and think, look, we can get dogs who are happier, who work better, who have more longevity, who connect better, who are actually less kind of lower maintenance, if you like. You can create the perfect thing by looking at these approaches. Leanne, it's been absolutely amazing. I knew it would be.
Thank you.
And I've got something I want to ask you off air, but which is a bit naughty because I've just said that on air. But the reason I'm saying that is because I'm hoping I can let you all know about. Well, I'm going to be letting you all know about something soon, by the way, in the group, about a way to access some of our people who come on our lives in a different way. But I'll talk to you about that.
Okay. Yeah, no worries.
But some other people have said they want to do it, so I'll have to chat with you about that. Amazing, Leanne. So where can people, let's give you a plug then. So tell us about your books. Tell us about where people can find you. We will share this stuff in the group, by the way, as well.
So my website is dogsfordogs.co.uk. So that's dogs, the letter R, dogs.co.uk. So I've written 2 books. The first one is about taking your dog for a walk. It's about teaching them the difference between hunting and social walking, which is where the dog is just being a dog and learns to switch the hunting off. It's applicable to any breed of dog, but especially important for the hunting breeds. And it just teaches a real sort of connection with the human and the dog when you go out for a walk. So you go out for a walk together, not 2 separate entities that start off together and then collect up at the car park and go back to the car again. It's about having that connected walk. And
that's a great book, by the way, because I've read it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, because you very kindly sent me a copy of that, man, and it's a great book. So yeah, so we must. So what's that book called?
Whose Walk Is It Anyway? You can get it on Amazon or directly from me. Just drop me an email and we can do that. The other one is Where's the Off Switch, which came about through trying to teach Eric how to manage himself better. It's heavily based on Susan Garrett's crate games. It starts with that sort of process and then goes through from there into exploring how to use that skill set into teaching your dog to be able to chill out in all sorts of gradually more challenging environments, from can your dog sit and watch and quietly wait whilst you have your dinner? Can they go to the pub with you? Can they sit in a work situation and watch other dogs work? So it gradually gets more and more sort of how to teach your dog to manage themselves and not get so stressed and frustrated when they're not working. And that's called Where's the Off Switch? And the other thing that is you've already mentioned was the Positive Gundog Conference. It's had a couple of 2 or 3 years hiatus with COVID, but I'm hoping to put it back on again May next year. So there'll be more information. All that's on the website. So if you want to have a look.
And we'll make sure we share those things when they come up as well in the group.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for tonight. It's been amazing. And looking at some of the comments, people have really got a lot from today. So, and really
thank you for having me on.
Yeah, and I appreciate everything you're doing, and anything we can do from a dog centre care group point of view, we're here.
Thank you very much.
Right, thanks everybody. What a great talk tonight. So double whammy this week. So we've got, as I mentioned earlier, Dr. Robert Faulkner Taylor coming in on Sunday. That's been pushed back. It was 4 o'clock. It's now 5 o'clock. That's going to be a real good one, and I'm really looking forward to that as well. Well, thanks, Leanne. Take care. Good night, everybody. Look after yourselves. Oh, what have I done here? I've done something. Oh, no, and that's fine. And I'll speak to you soon. Take care. Bye.
Bye.